The brutal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine by Russia continues every single day, with pain and suffering unnecessarily being brought onto people en masse. And one of the big takeaways from what we've been witnessing is from the perspective of Russia. Now, to be clear, no matter what, this war could not turn out good. There's nothing good about it. But from the perspective of Russia, it's actually going very poorly. And so from all of our perspectives, it's going well within the context of a war because Ukraine is standing a lot stronger and Russia is not making the gains and accomplishing the goals that they had likely set out beforehand. And that's good news, even though we have to recognize there is carnage and pain every single day. So I want to be super clear. What we're about to go over is an analysis of this as a war and this as a clash between two forces, and one that is within the context of expectations that Russia within weeks would be able to accomplish the goals they had set out, would be able to take over much of Ukraine, and we just have not seen that happen. That doesn't mean, however, they have not caused massive carnage. So before we talk about why and how this war is not going well for Russia, which, as I mentioned, is good news, and we're going to look into the specifics of that, I first just want to identify and recognize the most important part of all of this, which is the lives being lost unnecessarily. So you can see in this chart, and you have to be so clear on this, this is a massive underestimate. Every single group that has come out to try to give us estimates on the death toll from the Russian invasion of Ukraine has said, listen, this is what we can confirm, but there's likely thousands upon thousands of more deaths that we just haven't been able to confirm, and we'll be learning about that as this goes on. And hopefully someday, in retrospect, once this is all over, we'll probably get all of the truth. But as of now, reported deaths based on location you can see in this chart total 10,470. 10,000 people in Ukraine died. Thousands upon thousands of civilians, obviously Ukrainian soldiers. And you can see here it's primarily happening in the east portion of Ukraine. And if you are watching right now, obviously podcast listeners can't see this, but it shows the larger red dots are where the most carnage has happened. And those are in particular cities where there's been a lot of clashing, a lot of fighting. So as we analyze a situation like war, we can't become oblivious or numb to the carnage that is being caused. But with that being said, let's look into this fact that I previously outlined and identified, which is Russia's actually failing in many ways from their perspective, and they're not making the accomplishments. I hate to use that word because it sounds positive and all of this is very negative, but they're not making the gains that they had hoped and that many people expected they would. Reading from NBC News, Russian President Vladimir Putin has overwhelmingly more firepower, manpower, and naval supremacy and favorable geography than Ukraine. So the world has been shocked that he has failed to demonstrate military dominance in the first few days of his invasion of Ukraine. The Russian military has not only performed more poorly than expected, but it has made blunders that have been ably exploited by Ukraine's defenders and the steadfast leadership exhibited by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So what it's making the point right there is that the reason people are so shocked by Ukraine's force and their strength and courage in this moment is because by every objective measurement, Russia has a massively more dominant military. And so when you hypothetically sketched out a situation before this current moment that we're in, where Russia invades Ukraine, most people would say, based on the supremacy of either military, just in pure strength, resources, capabilities, Russia would be able to dominate easily. But because of some reasons we're going to get into here in just a second, that is not happening. They're not effectively using the force of their military to do what they probably had hoped to do with this invasion. So next, I want to look at an article that was written up about 5 reasons why Russian forces are struggling in Ukraine, so that we can kind of start getting a sense of why is it that with this dominant military, they're not doing as well as they had hoped. So the first reason this article lays out, and apologies, this is from Defense One, Putin told basically no one, not even his generals, his true intentions. Hints that Russian leader Vladimir Putin kept his true plan for Ukraine mostly to himself have been trickling out on social media for days. So One of the things that they identify in this portion of the analysis is that Putin wasn't actually prepping with people close to him, with his generals, with military leaders, and with the public to the level that you would need to quote unquote successfully pull off a potential overtake of another country, because he pretended, is what they suspect, that there was some other intention and some other plan with what they were doing, but then it turned out to be an all-out war he wanted to wage. And so because he didn't effectively communicate to the people around him that that was his plan, there was no way for them to properly prep all of the aspects of the military, of the Russian population sentiment, all those things that you would need to do the level of, I don't want to, not damage, but conquering. You do the level of conquering that they were intending. The next point they lay out is this is not the fight they planned for. Leading up to the invasion, analysts had painted a portrait of a modernized, well-trained Russian military, but that has not been on display in the war's first days. Again, if the generals weren't on board, if the generals weren't properly prepped, how are they going to prepare the Russian military? Plus, we've seen some level of confusion, lack of motivation among the military members, even just all the way to the ground level, where they don't really know why they're fighting this. So how could they possibly be as effective as they can be? Third reason they lay out is they got overconfident. Quote, if you look at how they launched their attacks, they clearly expected that to happen through a quick and pretty bloodless campaign, Cohen said on Tuesday. Again, just like the rest of the world had kind of expected, just like many military analysts had expected, if Russia was going to do this, they thought it was going to go off pretty quickly and Russia within weeks would be able to take over much of Ukraine. Again, that's not what we've seen happen. And so they likely were overconfident with the expectations of what was going to happen. And then fourth, they say they have held back their air power. Russia has not used the full extent of its air power in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are still able to conduct their own air operations and launch air defense capabilities, a senior defense official told Pentagon Reports Tuesday. So just military incompetence or bad military decision making. And finally, Europe's surprising response. Putin may have shored up Russian currency to withstand sanctions, but there's no way he could have predicted Europe's strong response, several analysts said. In a matter of days, German opposition to bulking up its defense spending melted away, and the country has pledged to quickly raise its military budget to 2% of GDP. Russian aircraft are banned from the European Union's entire airspace. And this is something that I think is huge as well. Number one, credit should go to the Ukrainian people, to Volodymyr Zelensky, to Ukrainian leadership, and Ukraine as a whole for standing up so strong with such courage to protect their home. Also, you can give a lot of the blame to Russian incompetence. And then additionally, I do think it's apt to recognize how strong the West's support of Ukraine has been, and that is undeniably made a big difference. And so to sum it up, Putin seems to have attempted to pull this off in a manner that was unplanned, unprepared, which you can't do leading into such a war. The Russian people around him, as in leadership, and the Russian people at whole don't have their hearts in this mission to the level that they would need to be successful. Ukraine has stood strong. The West has backed Ukraine with a lot of strength, and all of that sums up, I may have missed some points, but generally that sums up to a massive failure so far on the part of Russia. Again, every day lives are being lost. Every day Russia is causing carnage. So this isn't like a hooray moment. This is terrible, everything that's happening. But within the context of a war that's going on and us hoping that Ukraine can stand through it, there are good indicators to that effect. And I just want to keep giving all the thoughts, all of the hopeful energy to Ukraine, to the Ukrainian people, to keep standing so strong with such courage to defend their home.